to read to you a timeline of abortion from Planned Parenthood site. Now, obviously, this is like oppositional research here. They paint it in a comical, almost, cultural Marxist mindset where, of course, we're being cultural Marxists. Who's the enemy? Who's the enemy of the cultural Marxists? Given to us by Antonio Gramsci, the cultural hegemony. The enemy in America today is if you are white, American, male, cisgendered, straight, able-bodied, and a Christian. Now, if you're not one of those things, but you're 6 of them, you're still the privileged. You just have one section. You have one place of intersectionality that you were oppressed by. That you might be a woman, but you're still American, cisgendered, straight, able-bodied, Christian, right? So you're going to see how they classify those who were been against abortion. The timeline starts in the 1850s. And listen, 1850s, it illustrates the slow transition of America becoming morally debased. Because remember, it started changing rapidly in the 1960s. But America was founded on a Christian principle, so when did it start to change? I think you can kind of see the history of the change even in this article. It's called Historical Abortion Law Timeline, 1852 Today. In 1847, the formation of the American Medical Association. In 1847, doctors banded together to form the AMA. It became the male-dominated authority. Male-dominated, and now we know it's evil, because it's male-dominated. Authority on medical practices. The AMA scrutinized reproductive health care workers like midwives, nurses, and the obstetric services they provided were phased out. AMA members launched a full-fledged criminalization campaign against abortion and female abortion providers. State legislators moved to ban abortion. I think this is a wonderful thing, but yet they promote it as a horrible thing. And let's not forget who was behind this horrible thing. It was a male-dominated organization.
Right.
Thank you, cultural hegemony, cultural Marxism. By 1910, abortion was not only restricted, but outright illegal at every stage in pregnancy in every state in the country. Amazing. These abortion bans had some exceptions and instances to save the patient's life, a decision that only doctors, 95% of whom were men, by the way, had the power to make. Those disgusting men. By this time, America had experienced several decades of increased immigration. Worried about losing their hold on the country, white men in power supported abortion bans as a way to get upper-class white women to have more children. Okie dokie. Thanks, Planned Parenthood. It's just ridiculous. Everybody, the enemy is, and this is how they divide the country. 1930, deaths from illegal, unsafe abortion. Criminalizing abortion sent the practice underground, which resulted in a high death toll. Unsafe, illegal abortion was the cause of death for nearly 2,700 women in 1930. So understand that 2,700 women died from trying to perform abortions illegally. And that's what they campaign on. Whenever almost 1 million babies are murdered every year in the United States alone.
Yeah.
1970, legal abortion in New York. The first state to legalize abortion was New York City. One day after that law took effect, a Planned Parenthood Health Center in Syracuse became the first Planned Parenthood Health Center to provide abortion services. New York City, that's important. And the first freestanding abortion center nationwide. And then comes the landmark decision, 1973, Roe v. Wade, which protected the right to abortion in all 50 states, making abortion services safer and more accessible throughout the country. The decision also set a legal precedent that affected dozens of subsequent Supreme Court cases. But listen, the amazing news is this. and let's read it from the article, what's the amazing news and the battle that's coming, is the end of Roe v. Wade. The overturning isn't in sight. You've seen it. You've read about it. Let's really quickly recap it. Politico acquired a leaked draft opinion authored by Justice Samuel Alito last Monday night, in which the court seemed to vote against the 1973 case, Roe v. Wade, which established a federal right to abortion, and the 1992 case, Planned Parenthood versus Casey, which upheld it. If the opinion stands, when the court votes on the Mississippi case the draft relates to, in which the state of Mississippi is seeking to ban nearly all abortions after 15 weeks, abortion would immediately become illegal in at least 13 states, according to Newsmax. In the draft, Justice Alito stated that the issue of abortion should be decided by elected officials. Quote, "We hold that Roe and Casey must be overruled," the leaked draft reads. "It is time to heed the Constitution and return the issue of abortion to the people's elected representatives." Listen, there is something so amazing taking place in Louisiana as well. They are trying to completely not regulate abortion, but to totally abolish it in Louisiana, making it a homicide. If a woman has an abortion, and it's not the type of abortion whenever it's risking the mother's life, but just to have an abortion. And now, if that seems harsh to you, that she would literally be going to prison, committing homicide, then you've been desensitized. Because it is murder, and it is nothing other than murder. Listen, look at these amazing articles. Louisiana wants to make abortion a crime of murder. Supporters even say it's unconstitutional. Louisiana Republicans advance bill that would charge abortion as homicide. Lawyer, abortion bill could subject women to homicide charge. Abortion would be punishable as murder under the new Louisiana proposal. And listen, the bill, so it was read just a couple of days ago. It has now been advanced by Louisiana lawmakers. So absolutely monumental ground is taking place. This is such an exciting time. Let's listen. If this truly ends in a constitutional way, then it will go back to the sovereign states, how the Constitution was written. The sovereign states. We weren't to have a king, which is the federal government. The 10th Amendment reads this. Put it on the screen. The federal government possesses only those powers delegated to it by the United States Constitution. All remaining powers are reserved for the states or for the people. You see, and I wrote something out, and I want to read it how I wrote it. And I said this: I believe the reason America from its founding has become so great, so powerful, so prosperous is because our founding fathers established and followed the pattern of governance that the Lord established in the Old Testament. And we have become the world's superpower because of that. If you think about Israel and how it was governed in the Old Testament, what do you think about? You will probably think about the kings, Saul, David, Solomon, Rehoboam, and all the rest that we can read about. Right? That's how we remember Israel being governed. But this was not how God wanted his people to be governed initially. You remember the story. This was God's second choice. And it grieved God to have a physical king over his people. But because the people cried out for it, God let them have it. But that's not how it was intentionally supposed to be. Israel was originally designed to govern themselves. Look at the parallels. Look at the parallels. They were designed to govern themselves while first being governed by God. Think about it. You had the tribes of Israel, certain tribes, states if you will, tribes all allocated certain parts of the greater land with their borders defined. They were their own states. Their constitution was the law, and they had no king but God. There wasn't a central power, no king or federal government over them. The tribes were essentially sovereign states. Each tribe had a set of judges that were supposed to judge rightly and by their constitution, the law of God, whom they were all governed by. This sounds so familiar. And the Founding Fathers did much of the same thing. Now you can see in our history, we don't have time for it today, but it was actually after the Civil War that the federal government took more of a centralized role in the lives of Americans. And so it was actually ever since the end of the Civil War that decade by decade, more power was given to the federal government, the federal government, the federal government, and less power and sovereignty was given to the individual states. Now we understand, I read the 10th Amendment, that we are supposed to be, every state is essentially supposed to be a country within itself, where you have representatives, we're supposed to govern our own people, where the governor is essentially the president of our state, and the federal government has very limited power over what the states decide and they do. And that's why Roe v. Wade was such a twisted, perverted judgment on our sovereignty. It goes against our Constitution. So if our Constitution can prevail, then this will go back to the state's decision, meaning there are radically nasty, perverted states that will maintain abortion, but then you have states like Louisiana that could very well totally and completely abolish abortion. This won't get rid of abortion, but it will drastically reduce the number of kids being sacrificed to Baal.